who broke the whole Meghan Markle bullying scandal. And one of the things I think is most interesting about this is Prince Harry on his recent media tour went on about, so obvious. The palace starts talking about her bullying right before the Oprah interview. I mean, you'd have to be stupid to believe this was not a made-up attempt at maligning Meghan unfairly. But the truth is, you've seen the documents. There are papers in which this behavior is documented going back to, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's October of 2018. This was not a made-up scandal because she went on Oprah.
No, so a couple of things to say that, yes, the original memo making the bullying accusation was in October of 2018. First of all, Harry's talks about the palace. And this is an allegation that Meghan's lawyers made when they responded to me, that this was clearly an attempt to smear by Buckingham Palace. And that's, obviously I'm not going to get into my sources for the story, but that's a ludicrous allegation. Because if you read what I wrote, the Buckingham Palace does not emerge well from this. They messed up. They messed up because they did nothing. These allegations of bullying were made, and they did absolutely nothing. They just sat on it. So the idea that Buckingham Palace should put this out is just a joke. The other thing is the timing of the story. When I wrote that story in March of 2021, I did a lot of media interviews, and also when I wrote in the Times, I was completely upfront that the timing was connected to Oprah. And the reason why is because the victims of the bullying, they wanted their story out there. They wanted the world to know that, there's Meghan portraying herself as a victim of the palace, essentially. And they wanted to say that there are other victims out here. And if they put their story out after Oprah, it just would have been lost in the noise. No one would have paid any attention. And it also would have come across as sour grapes. So the only way to make sure they got heard was to make sure their story came out before Oprah. So it's not some evil palace conspiracy. It's just the way that the way these young people suffered in their view at the hands of Meghan. They just wanted that to be heard by the rest of the world.
And whereas Meghan, we heard from Gayle King after her best friend Oprah interviewed them. Meghan has the receipts. She's got the documentation to prove every claim she made in that interview. And yet now we've watched 6 hours of Netflix and we've read Prince Harry's memoir Spare, and there are no receipts. There is nothing to prove that the royal family has a racist who's concerned about how dark the baby's skin is going to be, or these other allegations that she said to Oprah. However, you do have receipts. You claim in the book to have seen receipts, so to speak, of the bullying, including, you read as follows. On October 26th, 2018, just as Harry and Meghan were flying from Tonga to Sydney for the Invictus Games, Jason, is it Knopf? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Knopf, yeah.
Jason Knopf, who worked for a time, he worked for William, Kate, and Harry, and then he split off to just William and Kate after things went south with Meghan and Harry. Knopf wrote an email to his immediate boss, Simon Case, Prince William's private secretary, saying he had spoken to the head of HR for the palace, again, this is 2018, about, quote, some very serious problems concerning Meghan's behavior. He wrote, quote, I am very concerned that the Duchess was able to bully 2 PAs out of the household in the past year. The Duchess seems intent on always having someone in her sights. She is bullying X, name withheld by author, and seeking to undermine her confidence. We have report after report from people who have witnessed unacceptable behavior toward X, despite the universal views from her colleagues that she's a leading talent within the household who's delivering first-rate work. Knopf, who's in daily contact with the staff, went on to say that the tour was very challenging and was made worse by the behavior of the Duchess, and goes on from there, saying the situation is very serious.
This is where we need to slow down, because there's an important distinction being made here. Valentine Low says the bullying concerns were not something that suddenly appeared in 2021. He points back to a memo from October 2018 and says he was also shown other conversations and accounts from staff members. But notice something important. Low also says he did not personally see the original memo. He says it was read to him and that sources showed him other supporting material. That matters because there is a difference between a documented allegation, testimony from witnesses, and something independently proven as fact. And that distinction gets lost very easily in highly emotional stories like this. The timing is also fascinating. Low argues that the allegations became public before Oprah because the staff members wanted their experiences heard before Meghan's interview dominated the conversation. But critics can look at exactly the same timing and reach the opposite conclusion, that the allegations were strategically released to weaken Meghan's credibility before she spoke. And that's why this controversy became so difficult to resolve. Both sides were presenting themselves as responding to the other side. Meghan's supporters saw an institution trying to undermine her. The staff members described by Low saw themselves as people finally getting an opportunity to tell their story. So the real question isn't simply who should we believe? It's what evidence can actually be established and what remains disputed. That distinction is going to become even more important as we hear about the people who were working directly around Harry and Meghan.
So did you actually get to see this memo, Valentine?
I had that memo read out to me. I didn't physically see it, but I have also, my source also showed me, should we say, physical evidence of other conversations backing up the allegation of bullying and testimony from members of staff about the effect that Meghan's behavior had on them. You know, people talking about how they were shaking with fear because they anticipated getting a roasting from Meghan, and how they felt physically sick. And it was obviously not a healthy working atmosphere. There was one point when one member of staff was trying to do something at a meeting that Meghan was trying to explain why something was difficult. And Meghan said to her, "Don't worry, if there's literally anyone else I could get to do this, I would." And that poor person was absolutely crushed. And just one of the many examples of being, completely squashed by Meghan. And a short while later, Prince William saw this person in the corridor and said, "Oh, look, listen, I hear you've been having a bit of a bad time. I'm really sorry, but just want you to know you're doing a really great job." And they just burst into tears. It was just so broken at that point. People were broken.
Walk us through, tell us a little bit, because the book is about all the people around the royal family, courtiers. Walk us through who these people are, not in terms of identity, but when I read this, part of me asked myself, why is everybody always crying around her? Either she's terrible, or these are a bunch of snowflakes, right? Are these snowflakes? Are these just weak-kneed people serving the royal family who need to toughen up a little?
No, they're not snowflakes. And let me tell you a bit about the two people who were closest to Harry and Meghan in the period we're talking about. So their private secretary was an Australian woman called Samantha Cohen, who worked for the Queen for a long time. Incredibly able, popular. The Queen loved her. Very, very, very tough as well, and very imaginative. And everyone liked Sam. And the communications person was a woman called Sarah Latham, who has dual US and UK nationality, and very tough, very experienced media professional. And these two people. So first of all, there's a point to be made that they're not stuffy old Brits. So the idea that the wicked old palace, tweedy old courtiers, crushing the spirit of free-thinking Meghan, that's just not true. And the other is that they believed in it at the beginning. They were very much on Harry and Meghan's side, and they wanted to make it work, and they did everything they could to make it work. But by the end of it, they and other people who work for Harry and Meghan were calling themselves the Sussex Survivors Club. They were saying things like they were describing Meghan as a narcissistic sociopath. And in one incredibly telling phrase, they said, "We were played." They felt they were manipulated by Meghan and let down by her. So, it all started off with the best of intentions, and it just collapsed.
After hearing all of this, there's a bigger lesson behind the Meghan Markle bullying controversy. This isn't simply about choosing between Meghan was the victim or the staff were the victims. It's about understanding how competing narratives can develop around the same events. According to Low, some senior staff members initially wanted Harry and Meghan to succeed. He describes experienced professionals who were reportedly supportive at the beginning, but whose relationship with the couple deteriorated over time. If that account is accurate, then the most interesting question isn't simply what happened at the end. It's what changed between the beginning and the breakdown of those relationships. That's the part the public can only partially see. And this is why we should separate three things: what someone alleges, what a source says happened, and what can actually be independently verified. Doing that doesn't automatically prove or disprove either side. It simply gives us a more honest way to understand the controversy. Because years later, the debate continues largely because both sides believe they were the ones being misrepresented. And perhaps that's the real story. Not just who won the argument, but how two completely different versions of the same period became accepted by millions of people. So before believing the next headline, ask one question. What is the evidence? Because in the Sussex story, the most important details may be the ones the public still hasn't seen. If you want more analysis that separates the claims from the evidence, subscribe because there's always another layer to the story.